Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Something happened this morning that was brought to my attention right after class. There were some online people who were left dangling, which wasn't nice. So we're going to begin with the online questions from this morning. And I don't know if those people are listening now, but it'll be recorded, so they can check later.
Question from Dayamai Mataji. It is so wonderful to go deeper in my understanding and appreciation of these very great and important personalities. Earlier in today's class, you mentioned how Srila Rupa and Sanatana Goswami manifested this utter humility. I was wondering how we can practice this dainya in the lower stages of bhakti.
How to. Here's the how to answer. Sadhu Sangha. What does that mean? Associate with devotees who are humble. It will help you understand, each of us understand, that we're not so humble and we're not so qualified in a lot of ways. Understand the importance of humility as a Vaishnava principle. Many, many angles of vision to look at that. Lord Chaitanya Shikshastaka. So it's important, and you set your compass in that direction. And then in good association, you strive to serve those who are humble, and they will help you. Their association will help you, both by their kindness, maybe sometimes by their gentle reminders, maybe sometimes by their chastisement, maybe sometimes in different ways. But in good association, then that and any other good quality can become your good quality and progress on the path of bhakti, and it becomes stronger and stronger.
Madhavi Manjari Mataji asks, what really is humility?
What really is humility? Oh, I thought I could get away with telling what really isn't humility.
And how to practice it?
I cringe when I hear that, kind of question. Like, really? Like, I know you're holding back the truth, so can you stop holding back the truth and tell us really? But I get the idea of the question. One way to get, for whoever's asking the question here, for you to get the really answer is read Brihat Bhagavatamrita, the section that I referred you to, and then you get what it's really like. And what it's really like is the residents of Vrindavan. And what it's really, really like is the gopis. The principle is Krishna is everything. Doesn't mean we're nothing, but Krishna is everything. Consciousness focused so much on Krishna that Krishna is everything. One sees Krishna everywhere, one feels Krishna's presence everywhere. It's not that you become nothing and everything else becomes nothing, but Krishna is present in everything. And that's real humility. The feelings of prema of the residents of Vrindavan is what real humility is. You find that section, it's in part 2, chapter 6. Look up Dainya and you'll find the answer to your question. Sanatana Goswami goes back and forth and sideways and over on that topic. Chapter 6, part 2.
Question from Srujana. How do I become at least a little worthy of the sadhu sangha I seek?
There's many answers. One simple answer is gratitude. Gratitude is something that I gave a 6-part seminar on gratitude recently. Gratitude is something that there's a cognitive, there's an affective, and there's a motivational component to gratitude. And when gratitude is there, then one is a worthy recipient of mercy. And there's certainly degrees of worthiness and there's degrees of gratitude. The cognitive is something is being given to you and you recognize the value of that something that's being given to you. At least to some degree, you recognize the value. Like Sanatana Goswami's touchstone. And something more valuable than that. So you recognize what that something is that's more valuable than that material. Because that's what sadhus give, is something beyond material. And then there's an affective part, that's what you feel when you recognize the value of what's being given to you. And then the motivational part is not difficult, but it's essential. It's you want to do something for the person who has given that valuable thing. You feel something and you want to do something. It's service mood.
Last question from Dayamai Mataji. Where was the Kadamba tree located where Rupa Goswami was said to have written under, or were there more than one?
It was over his head. There was a Kadamba grove. The painting shows one Kadamba tree, but it's not necessarily that there was only one Kadamba tree under which he sat. There are many Kadamba trees at Kadamba grove. I think we're now ready to begin. And Harish will remind me not to neglect the online people at the end. But this is the primary audience is those in the room. I mean, there may be some Detroit folks that are attending virtually. There may be some people in other places, but you're the main audience I'm addressing right now, at least. This morning we heard about Rupa Goswami, and prior to that, evening yesterday, Sanatana Goswami. So Sanatana, Rupa, and Raghunath is this morning's class. The painting that you see is part of one of the major remembrances of Raghunatha Dasa Goswami. The degree, intensity, and degree of renunciation of Raghunath is otherworldly, not to be imitated, otherworldly, and praiseworthy. The painting is indicating the side of the Jagannath temple. Some of you may have been there, it's still there. On one of the sides, as you're facing the temple, it's on the left side. There's a place where the shopkeepers throw for the cows the rotten Jagannath Prasad that people won't buy anymore because it's rotten. They keep prasad in their stalls for selling to the public, and after some time it goes bad, and they take that Jagannath Prasad that's gone back and take it to a place by the side. As you see, there's water coming down the side of the temple, and the cows come to that place and eat Jagannath Prasad. And there are some parts of that prasad that's so spoiled that even the cows won't eat, and that's what Raghunath Dasa ate. I mean, he first washed the outside of the spoiled rice, leaving just the hardcore kernel of the rice that was uncooked, and gathered that together, and that was his meal. That's what the painting is illustrating. And there's a whole celebrated sequence of events. I'll narrate it briefly because it's well known. But the background of Raghunatha Dasa Goswami was he was from a family that was one of the wealthiest families in all of India at the time. His parents, his father and uncle, had the occupation of being a tax collector on behalf of the Muslim king. And the numbers were really big numbers of what was the family's annual income. It's given in rupees. I don't even know if there were rupees at that time, but whatever. Fabulously wealthy family. They weren't landholders, they were tax collectors on behalf of the king. And that occupation and the property of the family was to be inherited by Raghunath Das because he was not only the eldest son, but he was the only son. However, he had no interest in material anything from childhood. Long story, we'll hear some of that. He left that wealth to become a follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And his father finally accepted, after much ordeal, to come to that stage of his acceptance. And his father sent several guards and assistants and so much money every month for his maintenance. He accepted the maintenance only for feeding the Vaishnavas. And that went on for some time after joining Mahaprabhu. And then after some time, some days only, he stopped inviting everyone for lunch. Mahaprabhu asked why. And the answer was given. He feels it is wrong to take money from a materialist. So he's no longer accepting that money. Even the money was being used to feed Vaishnavas. Oh, very good. Renunciation. So now how is he eating? He stands outside. This is the multimillionaire's son. He's standing, or billionaire's son. He's standing outside the gate, the entrance to the Jagannath temple, along with other mendicants. And when the brahmanas come, if they offer something, that's what his food is. Oh, very good. And that stopped. I don't see, where's Raghunath Das? He stopped because he felt like a prostitute. Oh, here's somebody who gave something. Now maybe that person will give something. And my consciousness is not good. Oh, that's good. Renunciation. So now what is he doing? He goes to the stalls where there's free prasad for mendicants like him. Oh, very good. And then he stopped that. So now how is he getting his meal? This is how he gets his meal. His intensity of austerity and renunciation escalated multiple times. Not because he was told, it's just he was spirited like that. And we'll hear something further. But he's best known, one of the things he's best known for is his renunciation. And that's part of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Lord Chaitanya has taught his Nija Bhakti's yoga, devotional service unto himself, along with Vairagya Vidya. So it's following Lord Chaitanya's teachings as well as his own personal mood of, big time Vairagya and big time Bhakti to Lord Chaitanya. He lived a long life. Here's the spread of his years. For 31 years, he lived with his family. He was married to a very beautiful young girl, and he had no interest in family life. And for 16 years, he lived in Puri with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And these 16 years, let's go through Lord Chaitanya's life. How many years did Lord Chaitanya live on earth? 48. So he was 24 when he took sannyas. He traveled for 6 years. So 24 plus 6 is 30, right? And that means 30 from 48, he had 18 years remaining in Puri. Where for a couple of years he was not in a state of madness, but the state of madness, total madness, came towards the end. So a big part of Raghunatha Dasa Goswami's staying in Puri with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was during those final years, because after Lord Chaitanya left, he went straight to Vrindavan and remained for another 45 years. So he was a personal witness to the extreme states of ecstasy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was trained and instructed by Srup Damodar exactly what was going on, because Srup Damodar understood, and Raghunath Das was placed in the care of Srup Damodar. So what was Raghunath Das Goswami's realizations? Otherworldly, and beyond even like transcendental, into this stage of ecstasy that were the concluding pastimes of Mahaprabhu, with a clear understanding from Srup Damodar of what was going on. A luminary. Very, very special personality. And when he went to Vrindavan, aside from wanting to give up his life and being checked from doing that, we'll hear some details. Rupa Goswami stopped him and said no. And he's obedient to Rupa Goswami, so it was no. Instead, you reside here at Radhakund, and every day, for several hours, 3 to 4 hours, sit under this tree and give all the Vaishnavas the opportunity to hear Lord Chaitanya's pastimes in Puri. Because you know the pastimes, you know the meaning of the pastimes from Srup Damodar, so you narrate them for 3 to 4 hours every day. So that's what he did. And in the audience, hearing from him every day, Krishna Das Kaviraj, and thus we have Chaitanya Charitamrita, compliments of Raghunath Das Goswami, compliments of Srup Damodar, compliments of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, disclosing so to all of us, to the world, and Prabhupada putting it in English language and then being translated into other languages, so the world can know about who is Lord Chaitanya, definitively. Thanks to Raghunath Das Goswami, who for 16 years stayed in close proximity with Lord Chaitanya in Puri. And 92 years. Consider the extreme austerities that he lived by, and how old did he live? We're not to imitate, but we can understand a spiritual principle, the yukta vairagya, or the the message that Lord Chaitanya taught, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga, Shikshartam Ekam Purushak Purana, etc. So in Krishna Lila, he was Rasa Manjari, sometimes known as Rati Manjari, and another Manjari named Bhanumati. That's our first slide, and we only have 75 more to go. A reminder from this morning, Krishnadas Kaviraj had heard from Raghunatha Dasa Goswami all about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so naturally he's attached to Raghunatha Dasa Goswami, as well as Rupa Goswami, and thus praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following their footsteps. So, Rupa and Raghunath is our morning topics and morning discussions. In Prabhupada's words, he's best remembered as the very emblem of renunciation. And Krishna Das also writes, Raghunath Das was totally uninterested in material enjoyment even from childhood. He's also particularly known amongst our exalted predecessor acharyas as the acharya of prayojana, or one who has achieved perfection in spiritual practice, one who teaches by example the ultimate goal of life. He's the acharya for prayojana gyan. Some pastime is a nice one. From time to time when Rupa Goswami was writing, not only he gave copies to Sanatana Goswami to edit and comment upon, he would from time to time give to Raghunatha Dasa Goswami. However, when Raghunatha Dasa Goswami was reading Lalita Madhava and critiquing it, it had a very severe impact on Raghunath Das, because it's the portion of these two dramas where there's a lot of emphasis on Radharani's feelings of separation, viraha bhav. And just reading it subjectively, he became weaker and weaker and weaker. His emotion, transcendental emotion, was debilitating his well-being. And it was detected. So at Rupa Goswami's request, he said, I want to do some editing, please give me the book back, and you can read this other one. Donna Kelly, Chintamani, it's a funny one. And so his humor changed completely, and in fact he wrote his own book on tax pastimes. That's one example of the kind of devotee he was. Here's another example. It was one time detected, then when Raghunath Das was not well, a Kaviraj came and determined that he's been eating too much sweet rice. And everyone said, that's crazy. So they brought in another Kaviraj, and a third Kaviraj, all three said the same, eating too much sweet rice. And then Raghunath Das disclosed that there was a particular pastime of Radha and Krishna where they were enjoying sweet rice. And the gopis were also partaking in the sweet rice. And he, as Rati Manjari, was taking too much sweet rice, so he became sick. In his meditation was such that it affected his physical situation. Another indicator of Raghunatha Dasa Goswami's mood of love is also described in Bhakti Ratnakar. We know from Krishna Lila that Radharani has her gopi friends, and Chandravali, who is an expansion of Radharani, has her gopi friends. And one group in our language is the left wing, that's Radharani and her group, and the others the right wing, gopis, and Chandravali is the leader. The gopis who are close to Radharani would stay near Varsana. The villages of the Ashtasakis are very near Varsana, just surrounding Varsana. And those gopis who were followers of Chandravali, they stayed in an area that's about midway, just a little bit above Manasi Ganga, on the west side of Govardhan Hill, at a place called Saki Stali. And one day, one of Raghunatha Dasa Goswami's assistants, whose name was Krishna Das, brought him a leaf cup that was very large, because he had the practice that in Vrindavan, where every other day he would take as much buttermilk, chash, as you can fit in a leaf cup. Now, those of you who've had leaf cups in India, you know they're pretty tiny. I mean, they're not tiny, but it's not like a bowl of soup or something. It's, fits in the palm of your hand. So this devotee or disciple or assistant brought buttermilk or chash in a leaf cup that was quite large. There's a certain tree called Pulasa tree that has large leaves, and he brought a large leaf cup made from Pulasa leaves, from a Pulasa tree. And as Raghunatha Das was appreciating his attempt to have him take at least a little bit more buttermilk, he asked him, "Where'd you get these leaves? They're very large." He said, "Oh, I got them from some Pulasa trees at Saki Stali." And not finishing the buttermilk, he threw it away in anger. Don't ever bring anything from that place again. Don't go back there again. That's the place of Chandravali. No, it's transcendental. He's not an us and them consciousness. He's not on a material plane, but he's on the transcendental plane, and he's very much in the mood of being with Radharani. And the mood of Radharani is a transcendental kind of relationship. There's, in one of Rupa Goswami's writings, after Krishna left, Radharani goes to console Chandravali, because Chandravali is also feeling separation. And Radharani feels empathy for her feelings, what to speak of her own feelings, but she feels feelings of empathy for Chandravali and tries to console her. So it's a transcendental kind of exchange. It's not a material kind of exchange. And, how do we understand transcendental exchanges? Well, we'll have to become purified a little bit more to understand them. But they're, at least in principle, they're transcendental. And Raghunatha Dasa Goswami was in that transcendental zone. It's described about him that he was so strict in his regulative principles that he was strict like lines in stone, says Chaitanya Charitamrita. An example of this is when he became very old. Well, throughout his life, he lived to be 92. When you're, up there in years, it's hard to do things. But he kept his vows anyways, because they were vows. So in addition to chanting 64 rounds a day, which compared to some of the others was, for us that's something, and for him it was just standard, he offered obeisances to Vaishnavas 200 times a day. Because he was such an elevated Vaishnava, many persons came to see him. And when persons came to see him, he would pay obeisances. And of course they would say, no, no, no. And he would pay obeisances anyways, because that was his mood. And before deities, every day he would go around the many temples, around Radhakund, and he would pay obeisances before the deities. But when he became very old, it was hard for him to get back up again after paying obeisances before the deities. So some devotees would see him kind of prostrated before the deity and help him stand up again. And then they would advise him, you don't have to do that. He goes, yes, yes, yes. And then he'd go to the next temple and pay obeisances. And that was his way of life. His regulative principles were exactly like lines on a stone. Here's Prabhupada speaking about it. This is having to do with taking bath in Radhakund. He was speaking about that. Raghunatha Dasa Goswami showed how to live in Radhakund. He was circumambulating Radhakund, falling down, making a mark. That is Radhakund Vasi. Not only counted holy names, but offering obeisances so many 100 times. So much vairagya he showed. He can take bath in Radhakund. First of all, do like Raghunatha Dasa Goswami. So the Dandavats Parikram you've seen. Those who have been to Govardhan and Radhakund. For those who haven't seen, the person who's doing Dandavats Parikram, they have a stone or some object like that in their hand, and they pay obeisances, prostrate obeisances, arms outstretched, place the stone down, stand up, put their feet where the stone is, and then do Dandavats again, stretch their arm out, put the stone down, stand up, then stand where the stone is and go around Govardhan Hill, or go around Radhakund, or go around Vrindavan. I know some of you know Braja Bihari. He, when he was living in Vrindavan using knee pads, he did parikram around Vrindavan town. And I forget the amount of time that took, some number of months. Every day, sometime. So it's a practice of humility, cultivation of humility. And Raghunath Das, being already humble, was fixed in his humility. Now we're going to go to his life. As we know, he was born as the son of Govardhan Majumadar. His uncle was Hiranya Majumadar. Majumadar family were this wealthy, super wealthy family. And they were Vaishnavas, his father and uncle. They were a little on the materialistic side. That is, they had attachment to their wealth and not as much attachment to Krishna as their son had. They had a family guru whose name was Yadunandan Acharya. Yadunandan Acharya was an intimate disciple of Advaita Acharya, which is important going forward for Raghunath Das. And Yadunandan Acharya was a recipient of Vasudev Dutt's mercy. Now it says different things, but in what way he received his mercy, but Vasudev Dutt held him very dear, Yadunandan Acharya. Yadunandan Acharya had a disciple named Balaram Acharya. Haridas had a very intense, very strong friendship with Balaram Acharya. So when Haridas was passing through their area, Haridas stayed with Balaram Acharya. Both of them, the two, Yadunandan and Balaram Acharyas, they were residents in Chandpur, which wasn't the exact same place as the Majumadar family, but nearby. And Balaram Acharya was a priest of the Majumadar family. So after Haridas Thakur left Benapol with that situation with Ramchandra Khan. The next we hear is he came to where the Majumdar family resided, and he stayed with Balaramacharya. And while staying with Balaramacharya, this is important, Raghunatha Das got a chance to meet Haridas because of what you see at the top of this slide. Raghunatha Das had, and his family had as their family guru, Yadunandanacharya. Balaram was his disciple. Haridas stayed at Balaramacharya's place, and Raghunath naturally got his association, Haridas Thakur's association. And it is understood that that was the seed that enabled Raghunath later to get the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that's association with Haridas. Then came association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu happened. Raghunath was the first to have Lord Chaitanya's association, is when he took sannyas. When he took sannyas, by Nityananda's trick, he stayed in Shantipur. And while in Shantipur, which is the home of Advaitacharya, and Yadunandanacharya is a very close disciple of Advaitacharya, then Yadunandanacharya and Raghunath and others from that family went to meet Lord Chaitanya. So he met Lord Chaitanya. And because of Advaitacharya's relationship with the Majumdar family, Advaitacharya made sure that this little boy Raghunath got Mahaprasad of Lord Chaitanya. Mercy. Then Raghunath had attraction for Lord Chaitanya like anything, because he was already detached and spiritually inclined, and now here's association with Lord Chaitanya. So his devotion for Lord Chaitanya exponentially grew, and very eager to again have his association, which became possible when Lord Chaitanya, on his way to see Rupa and Sanatan and Ramakeli, again stopped in Shantipur. And Lord Chaitanya stopped in Shantipur again when returning from Ramakeli in Kanai Natashala. And at that time, Raghunath got the opportunity to have discussion with Lord Chaitanya. And he, in between those visits, had I want to be with Lord Chaitanya. He tried again and again, running away, and his father would capture him and bring him back, and all those things, many, many, many times. So now he went to see Lord Chaitanya and begged him for release from this circumstance with his father's wealth. He was being bound by iron shackles, it's called, but he had no attraction to them. And Lord Chaitanya's words are described like this: calm yourself and return home, don't be foolish. It takes time to cross the ocean of material suffering. Don't make a show of monkey renunciation, markanta vairagya, simply for others' benefit. Enjoy the worldly life in a moderate way without attachment. Sound familiar with Lord Chaitanya's teachings? Anasaktasya vishayan. Enjoy the worldly life in a moderate way without attachment. Be fixed on Krishna internally while externally dealing with the world in the appropriate fashion. It will not be long before Krishna delivers you. So he took the instruction to heart. And when he took the instruction to his heart, his father's protection from him running away subsided, because now he's become a little normal again. Now, at this age, he's around, he stayed in his home place for 30 years. He was married, beautiful wife, great opulence, material things like anything, but not attracted to them, and increasingly attracted to Lord Chaitanya. Now he has this instruction to stay, enjoy worldly life in a moderate way without attachment. So that's what he did. And as circumstance would have it, Raghunath Das got the opportunity to demonstrate to the world that he certainly knew how to deal with material things. He wasn't like a bungling idiot. He knew how to deal with material things. The example that's referred to in Chaitanya Charitamrita was there was a particular Chaduri. Chaduri is a title which means assisting the king with financial matters, kind of like a finance minister, kind of like that. So the Chaduri, there's details. It's a little involved. The Chaduri was supposed to go to the landholders and receive the taxes collected by the landholders and give to the king. So he was like a middleman. But the Majumadars made a deal with the king that cut out the middleman. And the Chaduri didn't like it because he was losing a lot of money. I mean, whatever the wealth is that was the Majumadars, 1/4 of it or something like that was due to him. But he didn't get it because they just paid their taxes directly to the king, minus, the cut that the Chaduri would get. You get the picture? The king got the same amount, but the Chaduri was cut out because they had a nice relationship with the king. And the Chaduri didn't like it, naturally. He was losing a lot of money. So he told the Shah, or the king. And then the Shah became upset and said, well, go collect the money. So off he goes to the Majumadar's home, and the Majumadar's family came to know the Chaduri is coming. So they went skedaddle. They went out the back door and disappeared. They went in hiding somewhere. And when the Chaduri reached their home, they weren't there. So what did the Chaduri do? He apprehended the son and put him in jail. The idea was he would come every day and harass Raghunath Das directly. Tell me where your uncle is. Tell me where your father is. What's going on? And, it happened like it was a daily affair. But he didn't yield. And then by his diplomacy, it goes something like this. He spoke so sweetly and so intelligently and so compellingly to the Chaduri, by age and by relationship with my father, you are like my father. So I see my father as my father, and I see you as my father. So please respect me as your son. And it is a very pious act on the part of a father to give protection and deliverance to his son. So please deliver me. And he spoke so sweetly, so compellingly, that this Chaduri started to cry and said, very well, I accept you that way. You have melted my heart, whatever the words were. And just help me find a way that the money that's supposed to come to me will come to me. So he served as the mediator, go-between, between the Chaduri and his uncle and father, so that the Chaduri would get some money, and his father and uncle would not be, in trouble with the king and the Chaduri. So he settled the problem very effectively, very, what's the word? With much diplomacy. However, he had no interest in these things. Some people have interest in those things. He had no interest in those things. And so after some time of acting normal, or normally, he started trying to run away again. I mean, he's almost 30 and he's trying to run away and his father won't let him run away. He finally heard about Lord Nityananda. That Lord Nityananda was traveling about under the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to distribute the holy name, and Lord Nityananda was staying sometime in Pani Hati. So some of you know there's a Pani Hati festival. In Pani Hati, there's a new Pani Hati festival, a new Pani Hati in Atlanta. That's their annual big festival, bigger than Rath Yatra. Now they've combined the two, but it's the Pani Hati festival. And knowing that Nityananda was there, he went to Pani Hati. Because he had been behaving a little more normally, his father let him go. It's not so far from his home to Pani Hati, along the bank of the Ganges. So when he arrived there, there was a big, big crowd of people, and in that big, big crowd of people, immediately Lord Nityananda recognized. Now they hadn't met before, but he recognized. This is Raghunatha Dasa. So he saw him, he was paying obeisances from a distance. He saw him and ordered, bring him here. That one, bring him here. So they brought him, and Lord Nityananda started to chastise him, and in a funny way. You're like a thief. You don't come near me, but simply try to run away. Now that I have caught you, I shall punish you. I want you to feed all my followers chipped rice and yogurt. Now that's not a punishment, it's like sponsoring the Sunday feast. It's a great honor, but he's saying it in a funny way, because that's Nityananda. And he has all this wealth, so using his wealth to feed the Vaishnava is fantastic. And so he not only fed them chipped rice and yogurt, he fed them two types, chipped rice with condensed milk, chipped rice with yogurt. This looks like it's got a few cashews and some other nice things inside there too. And then he bought up all the ingredients and had the Brahmins mix them, and so many people came from all directions. The way it's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there were so many people, they couldn't all fit on the land, so some of them were half submersed in the Ganges and receiving their 2 clay pots of chipped rice and yogurt of different types. And they would have big kirtan, and it was such a nice event that Lord Chaitanya personally came. And Raghunatha Dasa could see Lord Chaitanya. And in the evening, after everyone had their prasad, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda, they took their prasad and they had wonderful kirtan. It was a fantastic event. And as the event was coming to a close, Raghunatha Dasa, through Raghava Pandit, offered the following petition to Lord Chaitanya. I am the lowest of low men. I'm the lowest of men, the most sinful, fallen, and condemned. Notice the humility. Nevertheless, here's the eagerness part, the lowlium part, remember, from this morning? I desire to attain shelter at the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Like a dwarf who wants to catch the moon, I have tried my best many times, but I've never been successful. No one can attain the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu without your mercy. Although I am unfit and greatly afraid to submit this plea, please be especially merciful toward me by granting me shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is at the end of this big festival and distributing prasad, and Lord Chaitanya came, and Lord Nityananda called him forward, again placed his foot on his head. Mercy. of Lord Nityananda. And Lord Nityananda spoke the following. You arranged this feast on the banks of the river, and Mahaprabhu was merciful to you and came here himself to enjoy it. He blessed you by accepting the offering of chipped rice and yogurt. Then, after watching the devotees dancing, he took prasad in the evening. Lord Gauranga came here just to deliver you, and now he has removed any impediments which remained. He will turn you over to Sarup, he's giving a forecast. He will turn you over to Sarup Damodar, and, making you his confidential servant, he will keep you by his side for 16 years. Go home and forget your worries. You will soon be able to go to the Lord without any difficulties. Well, there's always difficulties, but without difficulties that can't be surmounted. So now comes a whole section on transcendence, of overcoming obstacles through transcendence, at least the way that Raghunatha Dasa did it. There's a detailed description of how it happened. Because he had the confidence of Yadunandan Acharya, of being a very capable person. One evening, before the sun came up, they were preparing to get everything ready for Mangal Arati. The Pujari was unable or unwilling or something to take care of Mangal Arati. So it was not Yadunandan Acharya's duty, and Raghunatha Dasa and he were walking around discussing before the sun came up what to do. And Raghunath said, no worries, I'll take care of it. You can go take rest. Trusting the word of Raghunath, he went to take rest. Raghunath saw, this is my chance. Guards aren't around, I'm out of here. And so he left. Now, it doesn't say anything what happened with Mangal Arati. Was there a deity aparad, or what happened? There's no information, because that's a common question that's asked afterwards. I'm prepared for that question. The answer is there's nothing said what happened with the deity Mangalarti, but he left. So now comes another topic that devotees like to ask about, and that's transcendental trickery. So we're going to spend some time on that topic. What's appropriate for us and what's appropriate for Raghunath might not be the same, right? So on trickery, Prabhupada speaks and writes about Vaishyas. They live by stretching the truth. Examples. For you I make no profit, a Vaishya might say. In Prabhupada's explanation, there's no question of a Vaishya surviving without making profit. But they may say, sir, for you I make no profit. It's Vaishya talk. Or another example that Prabhupada used is, rub this on your head and your hair will grow, for people who are bald. And it's Vaishya talk. So Vaishyas do things like that, and it's part of being a Vaishya. And then comes, the standard for a Brahmana. Brahmanas don't do those things. And we're trained to become Brahmanas. We're trying to become Brahmanas. So we don't do trickery, we don't lie, and we don't do those things. And then comes a Vaishnav. So Vaishnavas may sometimes stretch the truth a little bit. May not, but may, sometimes. And then comes a Shuddha Bhakta. And we're going to show some examples of Shuddha Bhakta, not just stretching the truth, but, doing things that normally wouldn't be done by a Vaishnava. And then we're going to hear some nice examples of eternal associates in Braja and how they have another standard. Somebody wrote to me about 4 days ago, very sincere question, and I hope they're listening to this class right now because I told them to listen, about standards of transcendental morality. Is there such a thing, and what's scriptural reference for? In the world, there's morality. Different teachings have different standards, but it's all relative according to tradition and time and etc. Is there a transcendental morality? What's the scriptural reference for it, was the question. So the scriptural reference for transcendental anything is Shuddha Bhakti. And the standard for Shuddha Bhakti is pleasing Krishna. The principle of Bhakti is pleasing Krishna. So Rupa Goswami, this is our scriptural reference, Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam. And the Anukulya, or Anukulyena, is defined. The intention of pleasing Krishna. Now we have Guru Sadhu Shastra to know what's pleasing to Krishna. And Krishna is the object, and there's the processes of bhakti, anushilanam, but at the heart of it is the intention to please Krishna. That's Shuddha Bhakti. Now we'll take a look at some examples of Shuddha Bhaktas. One of them, a well-known one, is one of the Alvars in the Sri Vaishnava tradition named Tirumangai Alvar. He was traveling and he came across a place where he saw an abandoned temple, and it was the Raghunath temple, and he was very sorry to see the condition of the temple. So he went to pious people in the area, and no one would help to restore the temple. So he went down the Brahminical path and the Vaishnava path, and there was no reciprocation. And he had such devotion for Raghunath that he did something else. He did the Shuddha Bhakta program. He had, in his company, were 4 disciples who previously had been robbers. The first of his disciples, gives his name, he had a mystic power where he could engage people in argument and they would just be stunned in being engaged in argument. And the second disciple could open the door of the treasury house while people were busy having an argument. And the third disciple made everyone, had the power to make somebody motionless so they couldn't do anything if they wanted to. And the fourth disciple could walk on water, and he went through places that had moats around them, and he plundered all their wealth that way. And these were 4 of his companions with some powers. And so they went around here and there and robbed people. Now, elsewhere it says the names of these people, Chaya Graha, is one who touched his shadow became immobile. Touched by his shadow became immobile. And then the other was Jaloparichara, he could walk on water. And so they went around and got enough money to restore the temple of Raghunath. And look at the temple of Raghunath from an aerial view. Here's one of those 4 corners, or 4 quarters, look like this. And here's a close-up, like magnificent carvings, really big columns. Who's going to find the artists and artisans that can do these things these days? And here's one of the hallways, and it's just a magnificent place. There was a problem that got resolved by another trick, and that was, they still had this tendency, now that they had the use of their tendency. So I forget exactly how it ended, but they drowned or something like that. So the deity Raghunath now had a restored temple by means of trickery. And not only just trickery, but, theft, using mystic powers. But there wasn't for self-aggrandizement, it was a transcendental purpose, and once that transcendental purpose was fulfilled, it stopped. Now, we don't do those things. But Shuddha Bhaktas may do those things. You know the story of how the Radha, London Ishwara were obtained quickly. It's a nice story. You can read about it in Lilamrita. It's nicely described. One man had deities of Radha Krishna in his home. Prabhupada went with some of the devotees. And the man, some conversation, the man indicated that he would be willing to give the deities. Prabhupada nodded. He turned to the devotees. They picked up the deities and walked out. And the man went running after. Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. They kept going and put the deities in a car and drove away. Kind of a transcendental trickery, right? Now, we don't do those things. But Shuddha Bhaktas may do those things. They may not, and they may, because they have only one interest, and they know when and when not to use such propensities. We don't, so we don't do. Now, eternal associates, here's two nice stories of the eternal associates of Krishna. Of course, Krishna Lila is filled with these kinds of things, but there's a very nice history of the Suryadev deity that's written about by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in beautiful detail in Sri Krishna Bhavanamrita. And the description goes like this. You see, at the center, there's Krishna's flute, and a peacock feather, and a lotus flower. So Krishna is very attached to his flute. But on one occasion, he was so much absorbed in his activities with Srimati Radharani that he didn't notice. He would normally keep his flute tucked in his belt, but flute fell. And he was so enamored being with Radharani, they didn't notice. Because he's all-knowing, he certainly knew, but he didn't notice. His flute fell. But Lalita saw. And Lalita snatched the flute and starting having some conversation with the flute, calling the flute bad names. I mean, I want to read what she says. It's really nice. I mean, I could paraphrase it, but it's worth reading. Here we go. Oh, you think you're so important. You are so hard. You are so cold. You have so many holes. And it is you who is creating so much disturbance in our life. You were just born from the mud of a river. Without any disturbance, you are enjoying Krishna's lips. We have to go through so much difficulty. Rather than return you to your master, I will teach you a lesson. And she took Krishna's flute and hid it in her braid. And Krishna didn't notice, right? Because he's enamored with Srimati Radharani. And that pastime that day ended. And the next day, very next day, Radharani suggested, let us go to Radhakund. There's a celebrated place at Radhakund where Radha and Krishna would sit and engage in their activities together. And this particular day, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, Radharani challenged Krishna to dice, gambling. Now, we don't gamble, right? But Radharani and Krishna gamble. And, you know, it's transcendental, right? Wait a minute. Gambling isn't transcendental. Gambling is against the four regular principles. They were gambling, and they had stakes. And the first match, when Radharani won, Krishna wanted to know, what is it you want? She said, I want your Kaustubha gem. And the Kaustubha gem represents Krishna's opulence. And Krishna was very pleased. Oh, Radharani has all my opulence. Very nice. So Radharani challenged again. And in the second challenge, Radharani won. And so Krishna wanted to know, what do you want for winning? I want your pearl necklace. Remember the pearl necklace, it comes up later. So Krishna gave Radharani his pearl necklace. And then she challenged again, third time. And the third time, Krishna said, what are you going to put up in case you lose? I'm very confident I'm going to win. I'll put up my flute. That's how confident I am. Radharani said, I'll put up my veena. If I lose, you can have my veena. Radharani won. So Krishna went to take his flute to give to Radharani. His flute wasn't there. Because the day before, he had lost his flute, unknowingly, right? Madhumangal was nearby. Madhumangal said, oh, this is very bad. How are you possibly going to control these uncontrollable gopis without your flute? And Krishna said, this is the Krishna Bhavanamrita, the history of how the Surya Dev deity became manifest. It's really nice. Krishna said, you're a Brahmin, say some mantras and produce the flute. Yes, I'm a Brahmin, I know some very special mantras, and you recited his mantras, and the flute didn't show up. So he became all red in the face and very embarrassed. And Krishna said, well, surely you know Jyotisha. So present some prashna in your Jyotisha calculations and find out where the flute is. Oh yes, let me do careful calculations. And his calculation determined that Lalita has the flute because Lalita stole the flute. So Krishna said, let me have the flute. She said, I don't have the flute. Oh, yes, this is important. When Madhumangal said what he said, Lalita has the flute, she fell to the ground, like stunned. When she fell to the ground, stunned, the flute fell out of her braid. There was so much commotion going on, nobody noticed it except Radharani put the flute in her braid. So now Radharani has the flute, right? Radharani has the flute in her braid. And so Krishna started, Lalita said, I don't have the flute. You can check me. So Krishna checked gopi by gopi by gopi. The last gopi to be checked was Radharani. And just as Krishna was going to check Radharani, in comes one of the messengers of Vrindadevi. The messenger was sent by Vrindadevi because Purnamasi told Vrindadevi, this pastime is taking too long, go interrupt it. So she sent a messenger, Vrindadevi sent a messenger telling the gopis and Krishna, look out! Jatila is on her way to Surya Kund to check to see if Radharani is performing her Surya Puja. Get back to Surya Kund quickly. So the pastime stopped, right, on hold. And the gopis ran quickly to Surya Kund. And they got there before the others. But Krishna and Madhumangal, Krishna adopted his Brahmin Pujari costume and looking not like Krishna, but like a Paka Brahmin. And so here goes the gopis heading for Surya Kund. Here's Jatila Katila heading for Surya Kund. Here's Krishna and Madhumangal heading for Surya Kund. It's a good drama, right? And what would happen? But Krishna and his path with Madhumangal crossed the path of Jatila and Katila. And Jatila said, oh, two very qualified Brahmins. This is very fortunate. Can you help us make sure that Radharani does her Surya Puja very nicely? And Madhumangal dropped the ball. He said, we're very strict brahmacharis. I come from a Brahmin family, and we will not do puja for ladies. We're going to Surya Puja anyway, and we're going to do some Surya Puja ourselves. And Jatila said, oh, very good, Paka Brahman, just what's needed. Please, please. So Krishna played hard to get. Oh, it's very difficult. Oh, I don't know. Finally, she managed to persuade, because Krishna wanted to go. So she persuaded them. So off they go, Jatila, Katila, Madhu Mangal, and Krishna dressed like a Paka Brahmin. And when they reach Surya Kund, there the gopis, Radha and her friends, ringing bells and doing puja to Surya. And when Jatila, Katila get there, Krishna says to Jatila, you're not qualified, you're not pure enough to worship Surya. She said, well, we've been doing this our whole lives. And he said, that's the problem. She has to purify herself by taking bath in Surya Kund, and then she can come forward and offer a prayer for Surya Dev personified to manifest. Radha went to take her bath in Surya Kund, sanctifying Surya Kund to this day, and Krishna manifested a form of Surya Dev. That's the history of the Surya Dev deity, a self-manifest deity, Krishna himself, fulfilling all desires. So Radha came, and the Paka Brahmin and Madhu Mangal did their mantras. Jatila said, I'd never heard these mantras before. And there's these double meaning mantras. It means this and it means that, and it's speaking about, Radharani and so forth and so on. And all of that's there in his explanation, because a little commentary on the story. And Radharani looks jubilant. And Jatila notes, I've never seen you so happy during Surya Puja before. This Brahmana must be doing some very excellent work. And at the end, the Paka Brahmin says, now the main offerer of puja has to come and pay obeisances before the pujari. And Jatila says, go quickly, Radharani. Go offer yourself at the feet of this Paka Brahmin. He's done such a nice job. And she offers her obeisances. And as she offers her obeisances, the flute falls out of her braid. And it makes a loud sound, and Jatila sees the flute, and everyone sees the flute, and everybody knows whose flute it is. And Jatila says, where'd you get this? So Radharani lies. This is the transcendental trickery. One of them. Oh, the other day I was at Govardhan, and clanking down the side of Govardhan Hill was this flute, and I picked it up and said, oh no, this is that terrible young boy who tries to distract the gopis all the time. And I just decided I would keep the flute and throw it in the river Jamuna. And Jatila said, very good. And then she thought again and said, you know what? Give the flute to me. I'll throw it in the Jamuna. So now the flute, that's Krishna's flute, is in Jatila's hand. And Krishna wants his flute. So Krishna does some trickery. Oh, guess what? I'm going to Mathura along with my assistant here, and we'll do some nice pujas there in Mathura. And if you like, I'll take the flute and relieve you of the burden of traveling all the way to the Jamuna, and I'll discard it somewhere in some unknown place. Oh, very good. Here's your flute. So Krishna got his flute back. And then Jatila says, we want to give some dakshin to the Brahmins for doing their nice puja. Krishna said, I don't accept dakshin from ladies. Madhu Mangal said, I'll accept the dakshin. And listen, Jatila said, I see you're wearing a very fine pearl necklace. Give it to him. So Krishna declines and said, you can give it to Madhu Mangal. So Krishna's pearl necklace is now with Madhu Mangal. And you look closely at some paintings, and you'll see sometimes Madhu Mangal is wearing a pearl necklace. So now you know where it came from. Now, that's an example of transcendental trickery that takes place amongst the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. And Krishna himself does, and Radha herself does, and as circumstances dictate, for one reason only, and there isn't any other reason, for the pleasure of Krishna, enhancing the happiness and pleasure of Krishna. And here's one more example, and then we'll get back to Raghunatha Dasa. This is from Padyavali, and all of what you see here is just taken from Padyavali. One day, Radha told Krishna, "You are the very treasure of my existence, but your flute has robbed us of all our virtues, our chastity, our religiosity, and our observance of social etiquette. Indeed, this Murali has ruined our lives. If I ever get the chance, I'll grab that flute and throw it in the Jamuna, and you'll never see it again." Always remembering Radharani's threat, Krishna would hide the flute under his cloth when he would fall asleep in a kunj. But one time, Radharani got her chance, and this is the verse that's up top. She approached Madhava stealthily like a cat, taking care that her ankle bells did not tinkle. She slid her golden bangles up her arms lest they jangle, and keeping her eyes on his in fear that he might wake up, she slyly stole the flute from his lap. And there's the pastime illustrating this Padyavali verse, where transcendental violation of moral principles has its standard of Krishna's pleasure. Worldly people will not understand, and transcendentalists will relish. So Raghunath got free by trickery of Yadunandan Acharya. And for 11 days he traveled with hardly eating anything, but just fixed on getting into the association of Mahaprabhu. When he reached the association of Mahaprabhu, he was so happy. He said many heavy things about the Majumdar family. You know, the ditch filled with stool, and you know, you've been rescued by Krishna's mercy. And he then placed Raghunath in the care of Swarup Damodar, because there were several Raghunaths. They had different names, and he was called the Raghu of Swarup in Puri. And as a principle, Raghunatha Dasa never had direct conversation with Lord Chaitanya. He would always speak through somebody, like he did with Raghava Pandit. Now he's doing through Swarup Damodar. So he asked Swarup Damodar, "Please ask Mahaprabhu for some instruction." So Swarup Damodar asked, he said, "You're giving him perfect instruction already, but since he's asking, you can tell him this. Do not listen to gossip, nor engage in gossip yourself. You should not eat very palatable food, nor should you dress very nicely. Always chant the holy name of Lord Krishna without any expectation of honor." Sounds familiar, right? "Offering all respect to others. Mentally render service to Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan." Now this is the internal cultivation of bhakti, along with some external standards. The internal cultivation of bhakti is the topic of one of his books, which we're going to speak about shortly. Mana Shiksha. After some time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu received from a resident of Jagannath Puri, a devotee named Shankarananda Saraswati, who visited Vrindavan and brought back these two items and gave them to Mahaprabhu, who worshipped the Govardhan Shila with such devotion. As you know, he would hold to his heart, he would hold to his eyes, tears would fill his eyes as he was worshipping Govardhan, rubbing the Shila with his thumb so much he made this depression in the Shila. Along with gunja berries, he worshipped this Shila for 3 years and then gave the Shila to Raghunatha Dasa Goswami, who understood what it meant. What it meant was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was giving him residence at Govardhan. And the gunja berries represented the mercy of Radharani. That's what he understood was being given to him. And so he made it his life and soul. After Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's departure, he went to Govardhan. Here's some nice translation. I think this is something that you should have received or will receive. It's a set of dasakam, 10 prayers, written by Raghunatha Dasa Goswami to Govardhan. Govardhan Vasa. He's praying to Govardhan for residence. Govardhan Vasa. Prarthana Dashakam. The first verse, so the topic that I'm just going to focus on is how did Raghunath Das, and for that matter, the rest of the Goswamis view Govardhan. It's a long, wonderful description. Those of you that want to hear the long, wonderful description, you can listen to Madhavananda in day 1 of the Govardhan retreat give the long description. Here's the short. Govardhan, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is both Krishna and devotee of Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is both a devotee of Krishna and Krishna himself, right? In the mood of Radha, devotee of Krishna and Krishna himself. Govardhan similarly is seen that way by Raghunath Das, and more strongly in terms of seeing Govardhan as a devotee of Krishna. As the gopis see Govardhan as Haridasa Varya, the best of the dasas, the servants of Hari. The gopis see Govardhan as a servant of Hari, not as Hari, although he's also Hari. We'll see shortly. So in the very first verse, hopefully you'll receive a copy of this, if you haven't already, he refers to Govardhan as Krishna is his master. Nija means his own, and Pati means father or master. Govardhan is the servant of Hari. And even more specifically, in verse 9, the translation reads, imbued with friendly rasa for Radha and Krishna, along with their friends, you are an unparalleled giver of happiness to the groups of men, animals, and birds that take shelter of you. O Govardhan, embracing me and considering me as one of your own, please give me permanent residence near you. The mood of Raghunath Das is a mood of gopi, manjari. The mood of Govardhan is similarly wanting to see the union of Radha and Krishna and being a place where that union can take place. We'll see shortly. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, mentioned already, he is both Krishna and devotee of Krishna. Similarly, Giriraj is both Hari and Haridev and Haridas. There's the verse from the Bhagavatam, chapter 21 of Canto 10. Haridas Varya. In Garga Samhita, nice literature, there's a description where Rasa Lila is being performed. Krishna is so much pleased with Radha, with the Rasa Lila. Radha makes a request. Radha's request, this painting is illustrating that verse. She requests Krishna to create a very special place for the Rasa Lila pastime. And from Krishna's heart comes this manifestation that grows and grows and grows and grows, and it grows so huge, the numbers are given, so many yojanas. Krishna slaps Govardhan, says, stop. It's Krishna's heart as a place for Rasa Lila, for Radha and Krishna. That's Govardhan. To serve. So, non-different than Krishna, in the mood of service of Radha and Krishna. Here's this statement. Giriraj is Krishna's personified love for Radha. It's in reference to Garga Samhita. Produced in response to Radha's request for a place to perform Rasa Leela with Krishna. That mood of bringing Radha and Krishna together with a predominating desire to please Radha, even over Krishna, is the mood of Giriraj. Now, this language is a kind of adjusted language from what Madhavananda said, because I had some exchange with him after the class. It's in class number 1 of that really nice Govardhan retreat. It's all the texts are in his Krishna Karnamrita, that magazine that he produces from time to time, a whole session on Govardhan, which he says 3 times in this seminar. It took him 20 years to gather all this research, and he did it in 1 hour. It's like very intense. But this is his conclusion, because I asked him, have I understood correctly? Yes. The mood of Govardhan, as far as Raghunatha Dasa is concerned, is Manjari Bhav, which includes the other rasas. And largely that's how the Goswamis also viewed Govardhan. Now all of that is because Govardhan was so important for Raghunatha Dasa, and we're speaking about Raghunatha Dasa, and it's how he viewed Govardhan, his worshipable deity. Each of the devotees, each of the 6 Goswamis, except for Raghunath Bhatta, had deities that they worshipped. Raghunath Bhatta's deity was Srimad Bhagavatam. So he made his residence at Radhakund, and as you know, there's some history. The time that Raghunath Das first lived by the side of Radhakund, it was about 7 or 8 meters wide, very tiny. And he had a desire. So if you're a pure devotee and you have a desire, just like Rupa Goswami had a desire to serve his brother, Raghunath had a desire that in the future many pilgrims should come and get the blessing of Radhakund. He just had a desire. And Krishna arranged it. The arrangement that Krishna made was, there was a wealthy merchant from Calcutta who had gathered some wealth, and he was planning to go to Badrinath to create a temple in Badrinath. He had a dream. And in his dream, he was told to go to Radhakund and give this money to Raghunath Das so he can build a kund for Radharani. And so he did. And Raghunath Das didn't need money, but he was able to use the money, and Jiva Goswami was very prominent in helping him design and plan. We hear something further about this as we go along. I'll mention, by Jiva Goswami's influence, Rajman Singh was entitled, he was given the honor of building the first 8 steps in each of the 4 sides of Radhakund. So people, so some fundraising apparently. And Raghunath Das takes credit, and Jiva Goswami was, kind of the organizer behind it. And the place where Radhakund was established in the local language is called Arit, which is a corruption of Aristasura, where Aristasura was killed. And this is a photograph from who knows how long ago, before Radhakund became so busy, but it's far more simple than it is today. But it's quite large. And while the excavation for Radhakund was going on, the excavator workers found a set of deities of Radha and Krishna deep down in the earth. They immediately took the deities to Raghunath Das, who immediately made arrangements for their worship. And these deities that you see, Radha Krishna, are the first deities to be worshipped around the site of Radhakund. And now there's many, many. During the Julan Yatra period, these are the first deities to be put on the swing. There's a place right around Radhakund where there's a swing. And the deities from the temples the Utsav Murtis are brought out. And these are, because they're very small deities, they're put on the swing first, honoring Raghunatha Dasa Goswami. He primarily offered 3 books. Here's their names. And if you want to know that there were the sources, same source. But it's very commonly known. Stava Vali is the same name as one of Rupa Goswami's books. And it's also known, Raghunath Dasa is known as Vraja Vilas Stava. Prayers, stavas, in a valley or like a vine, many prayers. We're going to see an example from each of these. Like, here's a cover of Stavavali, it's now translated in English. Dana Charita, sometimes known as Dana Keli Chintamani. After reading Rupa Goswami's writing about tax pastimes, he wrote his own about tax pastimes, because it's a celebrated pastime. And Mukta Charita, which in ISKCON we know is the pearl pastime. So I'm going to tell the pearl pastime. It's a nice story. Thinking of Raghunath Dasa as we go. Here's Stavavali. Here's one of the prayers from Stavavali and the painting that goes with this prayer. O restless-eyed girl, your lake is the eternal home of you and your beloved. My residence is there. There I stay. This is a section, 104 prayers to Radharani. You see Varsana in the background. It's not that Varsana is right next to Radhakund, but that's the painting. And there's Radha and Krishna at Radhakund. And Mukta Charita, it's the pearl story or the pearl pastime written by Raghunath Das. I'm going to give a quick gloss of the book. And it has to do with Krishna with his cowherd boys coming to the gopis and asking them for pearls. That's what this painting is meant to illustrate. It's also could be, the tax pastime, because it looks like it's Govardhan on the, not Govardhan, Varsana, one of the hills of Varsana in the background. In any case, here's where that pastime occurred. There should be some sound connected with this. There is some sound. You want me to plug in the sound? Go ahead, plug it in. I don't know where it is. We'll try again. Which device did you plug in? It's asking me. Which one do I click? Line in? Line in or mic in? Speakers? Line in. Okay, well, it's not happening. Technology is great when it works, and it's frustrating when it doesn't. Okay. Okay, so you see what's on the screen. It's like an old little thatched place where they keep cow dung paddies. There are some little children by the side of that little thatched place. And here's Malyahari Kund today. Looks like a little pond with some algae growing on it. But what Raghunath Dasa Goswami saw was the pastime at Malyahari Kund. And the pastime begins with Satyabhama in Dwarka asking Krishna, I heard that when you were in Vrindavan, you made a garden that grew pearls. Is that true? And Krishna said, yes. can you tell me about that event? So Krishna says, sure. One day, on Diwali, in the month of Kartik, Srimati Radharani and her friends assembled at Malyahara Kund. And I became inspired. I really had a strong desire, as they were making necklaces for one another, I wanted some pearls to decorate Nanda Maharaj's cows. And especially, I have two very favorite cows named Hanksi and Harini. So I approached the gopis. Can you give me some pearls? So I can make pearl necklaces from my cows, especially Hanksi and Harini. And, the painting, this is an ISKCON artist. There's Lalita with her hands on her hips, saying essentially, I'm sorry, but our pearls are too good for your cows. But Krishna didn't become discouraged. He went to Mother Yasoda. And Mother Yasoda is always wanting to do whatever Krishna wants. So he asked Mother Yasoda, I want some pearls to decorate the cows of Nanda Maharaj. And I want to make a pearl garden. Can you give me some pearls to make a pearl garden? And Mother Yasoda smiled and said, Gopal, pearls don't come from gardens. Pearls come from the ocean. And Gopal insisted, no. I know that Nanda Maharaj, he plants all kinds of things, puts little seeds in the soil, makes a little hole, puts seeds in the soil, covers them up, waters, and very soon all kinds of things come out of the soil. Mom, can I have some pearls to make a pearl garden? And he insisted so many times, she finally agreed. She gave him some pearls. So what did Krishna do? According to the book the Charita, he went by the bank of the river Jamuna and dug little holes in the ground, buried them, and put Jamuna water to water them. And after some time, what happened is little shoots came out of the ground. And he was really happy, and he told Madhu Mangal, go tell the gopis that I'd like some milk for my pearl garden. And they said, no milk for your pearl garden. So Krishna went to Mother Yasoda, and she supplied all the milk that he wanted. And as the shoots started coming out of the ground further, he was really happy. And he told the gopis, come see my pearl garden. They came to look at his pearl garden. And they just laughed at him. And they said, those aren't pearl trees. Those are thorn trees. And they just laughed at him and laughed at him and left. But he wasn't discouraged. He continued growing his pearl garden. And after some time, sure enough, beautiful big pearls came from his pearl garden, pearl trees. And Krishna was laughing and joking and said, come see my pearl garden. So they came and they were amazed. And Krishna was joking and laughing. Look at these. They're not only big, they're colorful, and they're fragrant. So the gopis were competitors. We can't let Krishna create a better pearl garden than us. So they took their pearls to make a pearl garden. And they decided they would use the best butter and yogurt and milk along with Jamuna water. And they didn't have enough pearls, so Radharani authorized they could go into their storerooms of their mothers and get pearls to make a big pearl garden. And after some time, little shoots came out of the ground, and they were very enthusiastic. They wanted to show Krishna. Krishna laughed and said, those aren't pearl trees, those are thorn trees. They said, no. They're pearl trees, you'll see. And sure enough, after some time, it was thorn trees. So, Radharani's in big anxiety because they'd taken pearls from their parents' storeroom. How to return the pearls. Meanwhile, Krishna, in fact, made pearl necklaces for all of Nanda Maharaj's cows. And he had so many pearls, he made pearl necklaces for all the monkeys and all the peacocks in Vrindavan. So the gopis knew we've offended him. We laughed at him, we made fun of him, and wasn't nice. So if we go and ask him for some of his pearls to put back in our parents' storerooms, he's not going to be willing to do that. So one of the biggest parts of this book is the bartering pastime, where two of the best barterers were sent forward. Chandramukhi and Kanchanlata were sent to take to Krishna the necklaces and other ornaments and any gold rings and anything like that, put them in a golden box and try to barter with Krishna. And there's like Vaishya talk back and forth, and Krishna wasn't going to yield. He said, all the wealth that you have wouldn't be even worth one of my pearls. And Radharani was listening. She was hiding, but she was listening. So finally Krishna agreed, all right, I'll give you a broken pearl. And she gave him a broken pearl. And now they're in big trouble. They don't know what's the solution. So Krishna decided, I know they're in big anxiety. Let me make a pearl necklace for Radharani. So he made a pearl necklace for Radharani. He was so pleased with the pearl necklace for Radharani, he decided, let me put it in a golden box. And he put it in a golden box, and he decided, let me engrave the golden box with Radharani's name. And he was so pleased. He said, let me make necklaces and pearl box for each of Radharani's principal gopis. And so he did that. And he came to bring them as gifts to all the gopis. And they were so pleased. Radharani was so pleased. She said, let's do something to reciprocate. And Radharani said, let's make a big feast for all the cowherd boys and Krishna. So here's a nice painting. There's so many pearls. She's feeding the swans with pearls. And the story ends. Of course, this is a shortened version. There's many other details. But a big feast was arranged for Radha and Krishna. Everything was nice. And the cowherd boys got fed also. So, there's lessons, but there's mercy to be received from our association with Vaishnavas. This is, an extracted from the story, and one should be ready to receive it. A fourth book that's not listed in that main list is very small. It's just 14 verses, but it's a weighty book. And I plan to speak on this topic during Memorial Day weekend, a little different than what last year's Memorial Day weekend was in Ypsilanti. But here's the first verse of the 14, and you'll recognize it. My dear brother mind, my uncomprehending inner self, it's inner cultivation of bhakti. I humbly prostrate myself before you, taking hold of your feet. First point, I beseech you, please give up all pride and surrender fully to Sri Guru, and then a long list. To the spiritual abode of Vrajadam, to the residents of Vraja, to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, to the Sattvika Brahmanas, to the holy name of the Supreme Lord, and to the ever-fresh youthful divine couple of blossoming beauty, Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, and in this way, quickly develop attachment to them. So he's our Prayojana Guru, and how it's explained and how he's revealing truths about what he learned. What he learned was from Swarup Damodar. And according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, what Swarup Damodar taught him was the inner cultivation of Rag Bhakti. And it's encapsulated in this book, and that's why he says, take shelter of Swarup Damodar, Rupa, and Sanatan. It's the cultivation of Rag Bhakti through these prayers. It's a manual for guiding devotees to go further in their bhakti process. It's also for beginners how to cultivate overcoming obstacles to go further in the bhakti process. This is for everybody. He departed from this world at the Gopinath temple. This is his Samadhi. And as you see inside the Samadhi, there's a sitting place. On the wall, you see a pastime depicted. We'll describe the pastime quickly. Here's a close-up of the sitting place. Here's that painting in another situation, but below where his Samadhi is. And the pastime is depicting the following. Actually, it's two pastimes in one painting. Here's one of the two pastimes. Here's one of the two pastimes. He was by the side of Radhakund, so absorbed in chanting the holy name in the heat of the midday sun that Radharani came and held her garment to shade him. And as you see, the painting is showing a whole puddle of perspiration from Radharani coming down into Radhakund. And she held that until the sun heat rays diminished, and then she disappeared. And in the background you see Sanatan Goswami seeing the whole thing. Now before that is this one, where there's tigers coming by the side of Raghunatha Das. Again, over on the left side. Can this lady go somewhere besides the hallway? Tigers coming to drink water at Radhakund, and he was so absorbed he didn't even notice. But Sanatan Goswami noticed. And when they went away, he pleaded this time, and then again, and this time, build a bhajan kutir. You're so renounced, you're taking service from Radharani. That's not good. So finally, he agreed. So the local devotees built him a bhajan kutir, which is still there, very, very near to Krishnadas Kaviraj's bhajan kutir. And here's the final slide, slide 76. Another more modern painting of the same pastime, Radharani shielding Raghunatha Das as he was absorbed in chanting the holy name. So almost 2 hours. You're a very patient audience. So let's see if there's some discussion for those of you that aren't completely exhausted yet.
Maharaj, in the beginning you mentioned like Mahaprabhu's instruction to Raghunatha Dasa Goswami, don't eat palatable foodstuffs, and
Take the mask away, because then I can hear you better.
yeah, like Mahaprabhu's instruction to Raghunatha Dasa Goswami, like
Yes.
don't eat palatable foodstuff.
Yeah.
So I find myself struggling there, and like Raghunatha Dasa Goswami is like the epitome of renunciation. How can I progress in that direction? The desire for eating, Maharaj, like nice food. So because still I give up that desire to enjoy, there is no possibility of me progressing.
Well, the how-to question has bhakti as an answer. And with bhakti as an answer, you can begin cultivating how Krishna has enjoyed. Have you read any of Jamuna Devi's writings about her relationship with Prabhupada?
No, Maharaj.
Have you heard any of the stories about her cooking for Prabhupada and how his taste buds? Here's two stories. She had an opportunity to get some very special rice for Prabhupada, just rice. And so she got the rice, she prepared the rice, and she served it to Prabhupada and waited to see. And he just took a small amount and tasted it, and immediately he said, "This is such and such rice." Just from tasting. No, it wasn't enjoying, it was subtle and sensitive. Or another, this is now from Jahnavi and her association with Jamuna. Jamuna taught her to relish the taste of the preparations and to appreciate the subtleties. Now, Jamuna was a subtle person with subtle taste, not only in cooking and singing and everything she did, everything. But she trained, Jahnavi writes that she trained her. It was a new experience for her to take prasad with Jamuna and taste what are the ingredients and the mood of devotion with which the ingredients were prepared. Now, that's a directional response to your question, but appreciate that Krishna was pleased. It adds bhakti to the dimension of the event. I'll share a personal experience. Some years ago, when Puri Jan Prabhu was starting the BIHE, I was very excited for a few reasons. One of them was the opportunity to associate with Puri Jan, and another was I really liked the idea of being in Vrindavan for Kartik, but I'm service-minded, I couldn't just hang around. But if I could teach during Kartik, it was like perfect. So, one year, Vibhu Chaitanya, disciple of Prabhupada, you know who that person is? You've heard his name before? I've heard. So, he had a bad back, such that he couldn't keep his arms straight. He was kind of tilted over, and his arms were out like this, like a bird ready to take flight. And he came in during Mangal Arati, right on time, and paid his half obeisances, because that's all he could do, before the three altars, go into the Didi kitchen, and didn't come out until after the Rajbhog offering. So I requested the Pujari department, while I was teaching, to have a leaf cup of vegetable from Vibhu Chaitanya's cooking for Rajbhog. And for a whole month, that's all I had for lunch. And it was all it was all I felt the need for. It wasn't something artificial, because his devotion was just otherworldly. And I was enjoying tasting his devotion for Radhasham Sundar and Krishna Balaram and Gaur Nitai. There's a directional kind of hint. So if you can cultivate in that direction, then it doesn't mean you have to give up, delicately appreciating taste of something. But when the bhakti creeper is satisfied, the craving of the tongue changes channels, and one becomes more satisfied, not with quantity, but with devotion.
Thank you, Maharaj. Like one somewhere I read, like Srila Prabhupada said, if you don't feel like eating,
What?
But if you don't feel like eating, better don't eat. Like one
Yeah.
instruction I heard like
That's
somewhere.
nice.
So then I was like, oh, there is never a time I feel like eating. Many times a day, and I still eat. And that's just like, now what to do? Okay, now let's eat. So I was thinking I need to work in this direction. So, okay.
Well, I'm sure there's other ways than what I just shared. What I just shared is one way.
Need to follow.
Another is just a regulative manner. Now, when you look at something, this is way too much. Like some people, they take something off their plate and then just leave. And if they need something a little bit more, they take a little bit more, but they start with. So then, then you consciously cultivate the abhyasa principle. Just not as much as what I can eat. A little less than what I can eat. And that's healthy for the body as well as, for control of the tongue. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Maharaj, we heard about Raghunatha Dasa Goswami's view on Giriraj. I was just curious, do we also hear about other Goswami view on, or like relationship with Giriraj and how they Giriraj?
Relationship with?
Giriraj, Govardhan.
Who? Gopal Bhatta?
No, any of the other Goswamis.
Okay.
Is that anywhere? Or do we only hear about Raghunatha Dasa Goswami's relationship with?
They, for example, Rupa Goswami wrote a Govardhanastaka, which we sang during Govardhan. So they have a similar regard, relationship-wise. There's like Lord Chaitanya. He's Vishnu Tattva, but he's seen as a devotee. His mood is as a devotee. So, Govardhan is viewed consistently by other Goswamis, other of the 6 Goswamis, like that.
Okay. Yeah, I think my question was kind of if anyone views Govardhan differently, but it sounds like it's consistent.
I'm unaware of differently. But the tattva they know, but the regard is as a devotee. Now, in practical terms, that doesn't mean if ISKCON devotees like to decorate their Govardhan Shila with flute and peacock feather, there's something wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But even in that, their worship may be in the mood of a devotee. From the principle of deity worship is it's the mood of the worshipper that's everything, and the deity reciprocates with the mood of the worshipper. Anything else? You're all exhausted.
Maharaj, like we saw, you showed us the list of books that Goswamis have written, list. What I also heard is that some of the literature that Goswamis wrote was too high for the generations to come, and there is a Grantha Samadhi near Aditya, Dwadash Aditya's Tila. So
You're seeking verification of that fact? The answer is yes.
I'm just wondering, this is what is available to us today,
Yes.
whatever is shown.
Yes.
So there is more than this.
Well, you can say available to us, if that depends on what, manuscripts are different. Like, versions of Chaitanya Charitamrita or versions of Jaiva Dharma. I know this from Devamrita Maharaj. There's multiple versions of Jaiva Dharma, and that's not so long ago. So he's working with a group of devotees that are gathering up those manuscripts and trying to compare the similarities and differences. And you read in Gopi's writing with Brihad Bhagavatamrita, there's different versions. And he had to extract from those different versions. And he gives some record of what methodology he used. So I'm just responding to what's available to us, that part of what you said. What's available to us has different versions, and then there's ones we don't have available to us. Does that answer your question? In the back?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. So the question is, Raghunatha Das Goswami's deities, are they Radha Gopinath? And if so,
No, Raghunatha Das Goswami's deity is Govardhan Shila.
Oh, God.
That one you saw the image of. That's his deity.
So you showed a slide in the beginning that said Raghunatha Das Goswami is the Acharya for Prayojana Gyan.
Mm-hmm.
So who are the deities for Prayojana Gyan?
Gopinath.
Gopinath, okay.
And he didn't worship them, but he's the Prayojana Acharya.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Thank you.
And his deity was Govardhan. We're done. Anything online? Okay, online.
There was a question from Raj Patel, and he asks, where is this deity at now, Maharaj? And this
Which deity?
The question, I think, came when you were talking about the Radha-Krishna deities that were excavated near Radhakund.
Is he asking where is that Govardhan Shila of Raghunatha Das today? Is that what he's asking? I can give the answer to that.
It might be.
Gokulananda temple in downtown Vrindavan. There's a little history, and the little history is not so well known, but Raghunatha Das gave that deity, the Govardhan Shila that you saw the image of, that little square with Mahaprabhu's thumbprint, to a disciple of Krishnadas Kaviraj. Krishnadas Kaviraj gave to some Mataji, Radhakund Thakurani, who then gave it to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who then placed that Govardhan Shila at the Gokulananda temple in Vrindavan, where he is worshipped today. Okay, we're done. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.